معركة فيها مئات الألوف من الجيش السوري وعشرات الألوف تمكنوا.
Bashar Assad promising to prevail in Syria's civil war. Tough talk for Israel, too, after John McCain's secret visit with rebel forces inside Syria earlier this week. All that seemed to dim the prospects for peace talks, up the pressure on President Obama to consider military intervention. Here now to debate America's options, ABC's global affairs anchor, Christiane Amanpour, Bobby Ghosh, the editor of Time International, and Aaron David Miller, top Middle East envoy under several presidents, now with the Wilson Center. Thank you all for being here. And Christiane, a lot of developments this week. Clearly Assad feeling his oats this week. The European lift the arms embargo. You have the Russians saying they're going to send the defense systems to Syria as well. And the rebels reluctant to join the peace talks. I know you've been talking to all sides here. Where do you see this going next?
Well, I've been speaking to fighters inside Qusair. Now, this is very important. It's a town strategically located that if the Assad regime wins, it could turn the case. Indeed, they have, with the help of Hezbollah, which has been a huge new introduction into this war. Hezbollah fighting on behalf of the Assad regime, aided by Iran. Rebels barely hanging on. I've spoken to two top Russian officials whose basic policy appears to be Putin's policy to basically shove it to the United States, stick it to the United States, sending these advanced missile systems, saying don't even think about intervening because we now have these huge surface-to-air missiles that are going to Syria, to the Assad regime, despite pleas practically on bended knee from Secretary of State John Kerry, from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Both went to Moscow to beg Putin, do not send these missiles.
And Bobby, you believe the United States should push back against that?
I think so. I don't see that there is an option. This is a vital part of the world. American allies are sort of already being disrupted in the neighborhood by the events in Syria and by Russian and Iranian intervention. Pushing back against Iran, pushing back against Hezbollah is important. I don't think the United States can sit this one out.
So what does that mean right now? What do you do?
Well, what it means is arming and training important rebels and working with the countries that are willing to get involved. Turkey, Saudi, Jordan, Qatar, and beginning to empower the rebels to take the fight to Assad. If Assad is going to get large weapon systems from the Russians, yes, we can't give the rebels similar kinds of weapon systems, but that's not what it's going to take to win the war. Those weapon systems are not directed against the rebels. The rebels have shown that they can take territory with relatively little help. And that help has dried up. It needs to be brought back up.
You're putting up a big go slow sign.
Yeah, I think it's going to get worse before it gets worse. I think to say there are no good options is an understatement. There are really bad options for this president, who in my judgment has willfully and wisely decided that no application of military power, unless he's prepared to define a strategy, literally to identify a comprehensive military strategy that would degrade and ultimately undermine and get rid of Assad.
That would include U.S. troops?
No. Not necessarily. No. Arm and train, no-fly zone, and sophisticated weapons to carefully vetted rebel groups. I mean, that's a military strategy that the administration could address. The problem is, and I know Afghanistan and Iraq are false analogies here. No one's talking about boots on the ground. The apt point is this. The relationship between the application of military power and the end state. That is the single greatest constraint that this president is facing. How does the application of American military power not only degrade and undermine the Assads,
but get the Syria you want?
How do you deal exactly without owning it? And that question, Christiane, that question is really important.
These are all straw men and all red herrings because you can't keep fighting the last war. And what's happened here is that now we are witnessing right now, and honestly, it's not too dramatic to call the alarm right now. A regional sectarian war has broken out. Iraq,
Lebanon involved.
Lebanon, Sunni Shiite, and involved in Syria. Iraq, Sunni Shiite. American allies, Turkey and Jordan, buckling under the pressure of all these refugees. And this is spreading out. Israel involved, using its own power.
But then that gets to my question. Do we want to be in the middle? And Bobby,
it's not about being in the middle, George.
Of a regional civil war?
It's not really about being in the middle. There are several choices. And from what my reporting has told me is that there are many people in the United States, the Obama administration, national security and defense organizations who want to see arm and train. The president doesn't want to do it, and you've articulated why. The president has vetoed, as you know already, former CIA Director Petraeus, former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, former Secretary of State.
Year, yeah.
Yes, on precisely this thing, and people still want to do it. Arm and train. It's the only thing that you can do.
And let's not pretend that the United States doesn't have skin in the game. We already do. All of our allies are involved. Before any important weapon systems go up, Israel will have a say. Israel has already flown flights into Syria to take out systems, and let's not imagine that that does not have ramifications for us. Even if Israel acts alone, the message that is being sent to the Middle East and to the wider world that the United States already has kinetic involvement through Israel in Syria.
Aaron, let me ask you this. If the Russians are so determined to stick by Assad, is there any way that this comprehensive strategy that you laid out earlier can work?
Look, if the President of the United States declared that it was in the vital national interest of this country to undermine and get rid of the Assads and to assume responsibility for the quote-unquote new Syria, stabilization force, the billions of dollars that are going to be required to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, yeah, the United States could do that. But governing, George, as you know, is about choosing. This isn't about the Middle East, it's about the middle class. And this president, second term, one of only 17 in American history, believes his legacy is transformational at home. It's a domestic legacy. His role is not to get America into additional profitless wars abroad. It's to get America out of them. And that priority is extremely important.
Clearly the priority, Christiane. The question would be, how can you put a limit on the strategy if it is necessary, in your view, to take more action?
Yeah, you know, it's not my view or not. It really is what's unfolding on the ground. And I think Bobby has articulated, and so has Aaron, two different views here. Either you can sit it out and watch this thing come back to bite you, because it will. It will. These are American allies around Syria who are being absolutely undermined and compromised and could very well end up in full-scale war. And this is what Assad wanted. I remember at the very beginning, you know, Assad loyalists who had defected said this is what he wants to do. He wants to make it bad in Syria, make it bad, sorry, in Lebanon and Iraq, and sort of say, oh, well, I'm the only one who can be trusted to have, you know, some kind of stabilizing force. And I think that, look, a year ago, President Clinton, former President Clinton, a year ago, when there were 10,000 dead in Syria, said that the longer we live this, the worse it will be and the more bad actors will come in. Now, 80,000 people dead. In 1 year, that is 70,000 people who've been killed. There is a huge humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Syria beyond our eyes because we can't, you know, see it. And this is what's happening right now. And the bad actors are in there, both on the rebel side and on Assad's side, Hezbollah and Iran.
Out of time. You get the last word.
Well, this is not Iraq, and I think Aaron's right. The parallels should not be made exclusively with Iraq and Afghanistan. Another parallel with which Christiane understands more than most people is the Balkans. This is we should look more closely at the Balkans and our experience there to understand what needs to be done in Syria. There, you had the Russians taking one side, you had genocide taking place within the country. Eventually, it took American NATO military involvement to get this right. Eventually, it will take that in Syria too.
Ultimately, it was successful. Fascinating discussion. Thank you all very much.